Okay. So let's have a look at the calendar. Come on in. Shh. Okay. Come on back. Welcome back. All right. So here's the calendar, and the reason I'm putting the calendar up here at the moment is that March the 27th is Tuesday of next week. Thursday of next week is March the 29th, and you can see it does not exist here. Shh. And the reason it doesn't exist here is because Thursday of next week is advising day, and there are no day classes scheduled for Thursday of next week, okay? And the reason there are no day classes scheduled is so that you guys have a chance to meet with your academic advisor and register for classes for the summer and or the fall semesters. And I know it feels very early, but the first day for registering for the fall is this next Thursday, Thursday of next week, all right? So we'll say that. And the other thing that we'll say is that GCC this coming week is piloting something that I don't think we've ever done before. So if you go to the home page, you'll find, scroll up a little bit here, and we need to go back. One of the main announcements here is this thing called the Open Classroom Week. That is all of next week, March 26th through the 30th. And you click on the link, and it describes to you what I will just say in a nutshell. In order to help you guys make the best decisions you can about what classes to take in the fall, a lot of the classes next week are going to be open for people to just sit in. And so if you take a look at this thing here, you see a list of all the different classes that we're offering right now. And the first one is alphabetical. So the first ones are accounting. And if you're interested in maybe taking an accounting class, but you want to know what it's about, well, go to one of the accounting classes next week and just sit in. You just walk around and you sit in on different classes. You can take a look at accounting. You could also kind of take a look at different teachers and try to find teachers that match your learning style and figure out, you know, like, do I think that this person's teaching style is good for me, or should I pick somebody different? And so I think next week is a really good opportunity to get some information that I don't believe GCC students have ever had access to before, and that's just sitting in on whatever classes you want to next week. The way it's going to work is on the outside of every classroom door, there's just going to be a sign that says open or closed. And every time the teacher walks in to teach a class, they'll flip it one way or the other, and you can make a schedule based on when things are offered. And then hopefully most of the classes you want to sit in on are open. Any questions on this open classroom week? This is a nice thing, right? I think it is. I'm hoping people take advantage of it. I really am. It's a good question. I have no idea what the turnout is going to be like next week. You know, it might be a little bit crowded in some classes. I'm hoping people don't get turned away, but there is that possibility, I suppose. Yeah. Any other questions about next week? Okay, and then one more advising day notice. Again, no day classes on advising day. And there is a resume writing workshop being offered by the business department here at GCC. It's on advising day. It's between 9 and 10 in the morning. So if you want to write a resume from scratch, or if you want to spruce up a resume that you've already written, go to the Hammond Business Studio, which is in the East Building on Thursday next week. Kathy will deliver her, her discussion about resume writing, and she'll make yours more powerful and effective. Questions on that? There are no day classes. If you have an evening class on Thursday, go to it. It's still on.
No, I heard my teacher, my Thursday class the first time I heard that.
I can look that up, but I would be very surprised if evening classes are not on as scheduled next week. You're fine. Okay, so academic calendar is here. I want to see the, where is it? Whoa, holy cow, Sam, your prayers have been answered. Wow. I really thought it took like an act of God to cancel evening classes. I mean, really, I'm not being facetious. I mean, like evening classes happen, you know, like we always have evening classes. Yeah. All right. So no evening classes on, here, look, even on Poor Patriots Day, you have to go to your evening class. Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Becca. Thanks for clarifying. Any other stuff about advising day? All right, so we'll come back to our calendar. Specifically, we are here on March the 20th, and we're going to do this this kind of 3-section, sort of 3 days in a row on statistical stuff, and then this thing called the capture recapture method, and then more stuff about studies. So we're going to talk about studies and statistical things for the next 3 classes. Note that the plan for project number 1 is due now, although most people got it into me before the break, which is great. I'm hoping a lot of folks have had a chance to start working on it. If you finished it, throw it in the folder, and as soon as I give it back to you, you'll have a week to turn it around and do a revision if you're interested in improving your grade. Officially, the project's not due until April the 5th. Any questions about that? All right, so can we go to Phil on page 12? Towards the bottom, you'll find number 1. Thank you. Wadada? Okay, thank you. Becca?
First at GCC is deciding whether to offer more evening classes. Ian puts his statistical training to work by surveying those students in their classes. They're asked to answer the question, would you prefer to take classes in the evening or during the day?
Okay, so this is our first example of a study. We're going to think about this study. So I'm asking you guys to vote. Would you prefer taking classes during the day or in the evening? Can I get a show of hands? Raise your hand if you prefer day classes. Super. Raise your hand if you prefer evening classes. Okay, this is easier to count. 1, 2, nice and high. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Can somebody count, a few people just count the total number of students here, and then we'll get both numbers up here.
Well, what if you're both?
What does it depend on?
Well, like if I have classes during the day, I don't have evening class, but I like evening classes more.
Okay, so if you just had, if you got to pick
Yeah.
whether you could take day classes or evening classes, which one would you prefer? That's what we're asking. Okay, so which side are you on? Are you staying with the day or are you going to move to evening?
I'm okay.
Okay, so how many students do we have total in here? Any other confirmation on that? Okay, so if 6 said evening, then 17 prefer day classes. Okay, so we've just done our study. I'm going to take this information, I'm going to go to the president of GCC and I'm going to say, Bob, overwhelmingly, students here at GCC prefer day classes to evening classes. Is that a true statement? It might be, but I would not make that statement based on this data right here. And so what today is about is taking a look at some of the problems, and I think some of us already see them, with taking the 23 people in this room and trying to generalize to the 2,500 students we have here at GCC, right? This is a bad idea, and there are some problems with the study that we just did. Okay, so let's see if we can talk about some vocabulary as we analyze that study. Okay, so population, we are describing the big set of people that we're interested in getting information about. I asked you 23 people to tell me your preference between day and evening classes. But what I was interested in was not just 23 people. I was interested in what larger population? All GCC students. That's what I want to know, right? So that is the population of this study. All GCC students. Population is a large set generally, and it's the set of things that you want information about. Okay, we'll go to Linda for suppose. Okay, So I am testing. How many Ford Focuses are we testing? It says a Ford Focus. We are testing a single Ford Focus. I'm trying to take that single Ford Focus and generalize to what population? All Ford Focuses. I don't want to crash all Ford Focuses to get information about them, but I want to take a smaller thing, but all Ford Focuses is the population here. Okay, so population is generally a large set of things. Go to Mary for B. Okay, so it's just kind of weird. I don't know why we use the letter n. If you're solving an equation, you're probably going to use x. It just is what it is, right? So the n value is the number of things in the population. So what is the n value for the evening classes study? It's not the 23 people. It's the number of things in the population. What is it? 6? No, not 6. That's it. It's how many students at GCC. The population was all GCC students. The n value is the number of students at GCC. It's something around 2,500, counting full-timers and part-timers. Thanks. Okay, the population has an n value. It's all 2,500 students. What's the n value of the crash test study? I don't know, but I'd like you to be able to describe it. It's the number of what? Number of Ford Focuses everywhere. I don't know how many that is. Okay, Jason, C.
Census versus survey. Census examines every number of populations.
What did we just do here for the evening classes? Was that a census where every member of the population got asked, or a survey where some people got asked? This is a survey. Charlie, we go to in 2010.
In 2010, there was an actual census in the United States. It was not a survey, so we should all have been counted.
Do you guys remember just you know, a year and a half ago or something, that getting something in the mailbox saying, here is the U.S. survey. It happens every how often? Every 10 years. I just called it a survey. U.S. Census happens every 10 years. It's built into the, I don't know my history, it's built into the Constitution or into, it's somewhere in one of those original documents saying we should do a census every 10 years. So it happened back in 2010, and you should have filled out a piece of paper saying, yes, I live here, and here's some basic information about me. Is there anybody who did not fill out something like that? So we have a couple of people. It's also possible that if you live at home, your parents filled out the information, says so-and-so lives here with me. Did we catch it? Is there anybody who feels they weren't counted a year and a half ago? So. Okay, so not a U.S. citizen?
Yeah.
So should Johannes have been counted in this census?
Yes.
I think that there's spots there to say, you know, if you are not a citizen of the U.S., I mean, I think we're looking for a count. How many people are living here in the United States? All right, we'll keep going with Charlie. If
Population is very large, a census may not be practical, so we do a survey instead and try to generalize.
right, so this evening classes example, it's not really practical for me to ask all 2,500 students at GCC, do you prefer day or night classes? It would take a long time, it would be expensive. I still probably wouldn't be able to get everybody to answer the thing anyway. So this idea of surveying, taking a smaller group, is quite common and a lot more practical a lot of the time. Johannes, D? Yes.
Subgroup of the population shows us provided data for a survey. This data is actively being used to obtain results.
Okay, so the sample is just the people that participated in the survey. So for our evening class, we had 23 people here. You guys were the sample. So the 23 people in this room. That's the sample. For the crash test study, The single forward focus. Thank you. All right, we have two words that are kind of related. We have population and now we have sample. Which one is the big one? Population. Population is big. Sample is small. If it helps, sample starts with S, so it is small. Sample is small. Population, I don't know a word that means big that starts with P, but probably there's one out there. Yeah, Justin?
So is the only difference bigger, like that single focus is supposed to represent all the four focus that will come out. Like, that's this one, it's this part here is what will fall to, this part here is do the same.
That's the idea.
This 23 should be able to represent the.
That's the idea. Is that if you have a small group, it could be okay as long as that small group is representative of the big group. And this is where we run into trouble. Maybe that single forward focus is representative of all these forward focuses if they're all pretty much the same. But I've got 2,500 different students here. No offense to you guys, but I don't think that the 23 people in this room accurately represent the 2,500 people here at GCC, especially in terms of the day and evening classes. You have a built-in bias. What kind of a class am I asking? A day class. If I go and ask an evening class, maybe it's the other way. Maybe 3-to-1 people prefer evening classes, and so they're taking evening classes. This is a real problem, but Justin's getting to the heart of it. Is you take the smaller group of people, the sample, and you hope that you've done a good job and that it can generalize to the big population. Yes.
You know, for a lot of these types of surveys, states
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I really like a couple of the words that Phil just used. He said variety or variation and diverse, and that's what you're after. It's okay to ask a small group of people as long as they have enough variety, and then we get to generalize. Okay, let's go to E. Kelly. Go ahead. Okay, so it was very convenient for me to just ask you guys. You're right here, I'm right here. It was easy. It's not a great way to do a sample, but it is a way, so we give it a name. We did a convenient sampling. In fact, all the different ballots that you guys have filled in, they were all examples of convenience sampling. We didn't pick people at random from GCC to fill in these surveys. We picked the people that were right here. It's convenient to do so. By the way, there is a pizza survey. Can we, if it's already filled in, can we just collect them in piles and then Brittany can walk around at some point and gather them? Okay, we will go to Iris for okay, so this is way better than what we just did. If instead of asking you 23 people, I would have taken 23 random names from a complete list of all students at GCC and asked them what their preference is, that would be a lot more representative of the GCPC population. Simple random sampling, that's the ideal. Johannes.
Is that how to do it with the jury duty?
So does anybody know about how, so are you saying how the juries get picked to just be assigned jury duty, or are you talking about how a specific jury would get picked for a specific case? It's two different things.
Yeah, well, if it's a specific, it would be voir dire, but the email, the mailing process probably.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
My parents experienced that. People are picked, generally at random for jury duty, but then they do kind of a background check on them and ask them what they know. For each specific court case, they might want, certain my dad, being police, like, he's often not picked because he has knowledge of the law, whereas they were lawyers don't have knowledge of the law. That same with my mom, when she tells them that she's very tough, they usually don't pick her because she has knowledge.
Right.
That she might be able to do it.
So you're talking the specific case.
Yeah, it's not a knowledge of the law. It's if your occupation is to prosecute, well, not even prosecute, that's not even your job, but enforce the law. So you naturally have a bias towards if you're sitting there and somebody is accused of rape or murder or whatever the case may be, from your experience, it's obviously going to be somebody that has the same job as you that has put that person in that seat. So you're naturally going to have that bias to believe that the arresting officer obviously had good reason for it. So you're without hearing everything, you're going to assume that the guy's guilty.
Yeah, they want more people who can be a little bit.
Yeah.
Someone's going to be like straight up, they're guilty no matter what happens.
Okay, so let's bring this back for just a second. I appreciate the Okay, all right, let's come back. Let's come back. There are like entire courses on political science that are geared towards this kind of question. I will say the distinction that I want to make here, it feels like we're talking about how do the lawyers decide which jury members would be most appropriate for their case. And there are people paid lots and lots of money to help lawyers pick the right jurors. The other side, the easier for us to think about side, is how do people even get called to jury duty, just in general. And I think that it's not supposed to be a simple random sample because once you serve, maybe you don't have to serve for like another 5 years. But if it were random, in theory, you could serve today and then have to serve again in 2 weeks. So I think it's really more of a just let's go through the list. I don't know how they go through the list, but everybody that's eligible because they haven't served in 5 years, let's pick somehow. Yeah.
What if you serve more?
I don't think you'll get called more than one. I'm just making up the number 5 years. That's what's in my head. But I don't think they will call you until it's been at least 5 years. Okay, last thing, and then we move on. So that sounds like simple random sampling. I think there's still problems with the way that Phil, not anything that Phil is doing. He's doing what he's being told to do. But what's the problem with picking numbers at random out of the phone book? Again? So maybe the cell phone, do you include cell phones or is it? Okay, so cell phones are included. Other problems?
Some people don't have phones.
Some people don't have phones. Does everybody have an equal chance of getting picked? Nope. If you don't have a phone, what's that? Yeah, and then you can opt out if they call you. Leave me alone. I'm having dinner. You get lots of that, right? Yeah. Take your anger out on Phil. It's him. He's calling you. All right. We're moving on to quota sampling. I think are we at Brittany? Okay, so for example, I could say I want to make sure that with my evening class example, I ask that 50% of the people that I ask should have brown hair and 50% should have blonde hair. This is a quota that I'm enforcing. I have made up that quota. Is this a good quota? Is this a good thing that I should be doing for my evening class study? You can see there's problems with it. Okay, sometimes the problems aren't as obvious when you make up quotas, but generally there are problems. When a person decides, I'm going to force the population to be 50% this and 20% that, 30% that. Okay, we'll go back to Doug. Stratified. Okay, so this kind of thing maybe, instead of me picking 10 people with brown hair and 10 people with blonde hair, I'll say, well, let's at least separate all the GCC students out by hair color and then I'll randomly pick enough people that have blonde hair, and I'll randomly pick enough people with brown hair. Still not a good thing that I've done in terms of splitting it, but at least there's some randomness. I'm not choosing this person has blonde hair, I'm going to pick them, and I pick that one. This is stratified sampling. Is there a question here? Yeah, Alex? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it feels like if you pick some good strata, then maybe you can make it so that the people that you choose from are representative of the entire population. But the nice thing about this idea of simple random sampling is that it will take care of it for you. If 20% of the country has blonde hair, I don't know why I'm making up hair, but nobody could be offended if I just talk about hair, right? So if 20% of the country has blonde hair and we just randomly pick people, then about 20% of them will have blonde hair, right? And like 30% will have the brown hair. And like it is what it is, and it will take care of it, as opposed to us trying to force it to be what we think is representative. If you just let Yes, let's go. I'm jumping real quick to M. It's on the next page, but we'll just read it. Alex? Chance error, it's part M. I think it's on the next page. Oh, are there two M's? I'm on page 15. Middle of page 15. Okay. What do you think? If we're just looking out this window, will it always be the same results if I look at genders of 20 people? It'll change. And so there is some chance variability, and that's what you're talking about. Maybe you accidentally, like what if we have a class that lets out right next door, maybe it's a class on women's studies. Now, of course, men can take that class too, but my guess is that there are more women taking a class on women's studies than men. Is that reasonable? I don't know it to be fact, but it's my guess. So if a women's studies class lets out next door, then I feel like I'll have a lot of women in my next 20 people walking past the room. And maybe that's, like there's some problem there because like by chance we got unlucky. But if you wait it out, if you look for 50 people, or if you just do it a few times, like in the long run, this random idea will get us a good representative of the population. Okay. All right, lots of good thoughts and questions today. We are on, what are we on now? G. And I think we are back to Hillary. Okay, this is a tricky one. The sampling frame is a set of people that had a chance to be part of the survey. So we did an evening class survey right here. We had 23 people participate. Did every GCC student have a chance to be in this study? No. What GCC students had a chance to be in the study? Only the people that are registered for this class, right? And more than that, there are some people registered for this class that did not participate in today's study. Why? Because they're absent today. Look around, there are a few people absent today. Emma, did you participate in the question that we asked at the start of class? No, Emma came a few minutes late. She's even here and she didn't get a chance to participate. So you can see that the people that had a chance to participate, it's like this narrower and narrower group of people at GCC. And that's a problem too. So evening classes sampling frame was students in Ian's class who were here at whatever time we did it, 11:10 today. That's a pretty restricted group of people. If I'm trying to get information about all GCC students and their preference for day or evening classes, that's not so good. Alex? The target population is all GCC. That's the way that I set it up in the beginning when I decided I wanted to think about more evening classes being offered here. So much better than what we did again is to like really randomly find people at GCC to ask. Yes, the sample is the people that actually participated. The sampling frame is the people that had a chance to participate. Only the people that were in this class and were here at the right time. Okay. All right, the crash test sampling frame, we'll have to make it up. Again, there was one Ford Focus that was tested. Did every Ford Focus in the country have a chance to be that single Ford Focus that was tested? Certainly not, right? If you're driving a Ford Focus, they're not going to ask you to bring your car in for crash test studies. Okay, so already we're down to just the new cars that happen to be being produced like right now as we speak, as we're ready to do this study. And do you think they randomly picked one car? I mean, my guess is that they went to one single plant that was making cars. And so the only cars that have a chance now are only the ones at that plant, and maybe the ones at the plant across the country are not at all like the ones that we're making here in Massachusetts. And of all the cars at this one plant, only the ones that are like right there on the assembly line in front of the person doing the study have a chance. And it's, again, it's this idea of the smaller and smaller window. So we'll make stuff up here, but you know, like only the cars at a single plant on a single day. I don't expect, I mean, I'm not going to give you a question like that on a test where you have to make stuff up, but just putting this example out there that really, really restricted in terms of the sampling frame here. Madonna? Mm-hmm. So maybe that would be better than the new ones? Right, right. So we'd have some wear and tear already. Yeah. Okay, we will go to H, and where are we now? I think we're back to Justin. Okay, so the sampling proportion is just the percentage of people that say, in our case, yeah, I prefer, what do we have here? No, I'm sorry. It's the percentage of the population that participated in the survey. So how many people participated in our evening classes survey? 23, that goes on top. Divided by the total number of students at GCC, that's the whole population, 2,500. Can somebody type that in to a calculator? How much? What did you say? What did you say? 0.86?
Yeah.
That's probably a pretty good guess. With a couple of zeros in the front. Anybody have a number for me? It's a 9.2, right?
Yeah, 9.
Okay, so it's 0.0092. 86 is close. So this is 0.92%. I asked a little bit under 1% of the GCC student body to participate in my survey. That doesn't seem like very many. A little bit less than 1%. If I were to ask 10%, it's better. I asked 20%, oh gosh, that's plenty. That number is kind of on the small side. Okay, then down here, this is just kind of a random thing. You don't need to memorize it, but if you ask like 1,000 to 1,500 people, probably doesn't much matter what population you're talking about. That might be enough people. And it seems weird that maybe 1,500 people could be enough for the entire US. If I ask 1,500 people and I want to get information about 300 million, it seems like that's a big, big gap. It turns out that you don't need all that many. You don't need as many as you'd expect. Okay, let's go to I. Where are we now? Sam? Okay, so the parameter for my evening class study, let's think about, let's see, so really the question that I'm after, what percent of GCC students prefer evening classes? That's really what I'd like to know. What percent of all GCC students prefer evening classes? Let's jump down to part J for a second. We'll go to Blake. Okay, so let's think about an evening classes statistic. Let's think about what percentage of you guys prefer evening classes. How many people preferred evening classes? It was it 6? Out of how many people were total in our survey? It was 23. Somebody with a calculator? 6 on 23. It's about 24%. Nobody want to type it in for me? 26? Good. So in this class, 26% of you prefer evening classes. It's actually kind of surprising. That's even high. I mean, like, I know it's a low number, but it's even high given that you're taking a class at 11 in the morning. But 26% of you prefer evening classes. Now we'll go back to Justin's idea. I'd really like to generalize. I'd really like to say not just 26% of the people in this room right here and right now. I'd really like to say, well, maybe about 26% of all GCC students prefer evening classes. I don't think I can say that, but that's the idea. That's what we're after up here in the top. What percent of all GCC students prefer evening classes? I'd like to generalize and say about 26%. This number at the top that I don't know, that's called the parameter. The number at the bottom that's easy to find, that's called a statistic. I'm going to ask you on a test to identify a certain number as being either a parameter or a statistic. How are you supposed to know which one? The parameter is the number involving the entire population. The statistic is the number involving the little tiny sample. Okay? Parameter is something that's generally hard or impossible to find. Statistic, pretty easy. Questions on the difference?
So if you're doing a census, you're getting
Yes. When we talk about the US Census, and you guys filled it in and say, we figured out that a certain percentage of the US population is Latino, that is a parameter because we've asked the entire population. And we come up with an answer that says this percentage of people living in the US is Latino. That's a parameter. Okay, let's go down here to some biases. L, and we'll go to Jocelyn. Yes. Okay. Can you guys circle? Parameter or statistic? That is a parameter. All adult women, parameter. Alex. Is that a parameter or a statistic? It's a statistic. We are asking a small collection of women, and we are hoping to generalize our results to a large collection of women. This survey is biased. What is the what's that?
It's not always narrow, but you're only checking the height. Unusually tall women.
Agree? The height of women in the WNBA is not representative of the height of the typical woman here in the US, right? Okay, so this survey is clearly biased. It's obvious that there's a bias here. Again, the idea for today is to just think about asking questions before you buy into any result. If I say, hey, I did a survey, and it turns out the height of an average woman here is 6'3", well, you should, I mean, you'd be like, wow, how did that happen? Well, it could have happened because I did something really stupid, and I came up with a sample that was not representative. So there's a bias there. Okay, let's go to M, and we'll go to Holly. Okay, this WNBA example, that is selection bias. I have selected too many women that are taller than average. So this WNBA thing is an example of selection bias or sample bias. We'll go to Zach for participation. Okay, so suppose, let's look at this next example here. Yeah, we'll actually get Henry, suppose. Okay, so I think we said that that was selection bias. And then keep going, Henry. Okay, this is participation bias. And again, we'll take a look at our definition for participation bias. Not all individuals respond to the survey. It's okay as long as the people that are not responding are kind of similar to the people that are responding. As long as you have results that you can generalize, it's okay. You don't need everybody to respond. Oftentimes a response rate of like 30% is a success. You send out like 1,000 flyers, and if 300 of them come back, you did pretty well. But you want to make sure that the 700 people that didn't respond, they didn't not respond because they don't want to commit, they don't want to admit that they committed tax fraud, right? You could have 300 people saying, oh yeah, I did everything by the books. And then 700 people that committed tax fraud, but it looks like everybody's doing things by the books because of the way the bias is working.
Non-response.
Yeah, non-response could be a response. All right. So we are going to go down to this studying studies part 1. There's an example that we skipped over, but I want to make sure you have enough time to do this. So we got one last reader. Emma, did you read? You read there, the 5? Okay. $25. Okay, so there's a little study that happened, a survey, and what you guys are going to do in your groups is you're going to answer these 7 questions or so, and then on the next page you will find several more little surveys, little paragraphs, and you're going to answer the same 7 questions over and over, and talk with your neighbors, and I can walk around, just raise a flag if we have any questions.